My name is Quinn. I'm 33 years old, living and working in Chicago as the PR director at one of the largest communications firms in the region. My birthday party was held right in the office. Coworkers gathered around, voices lifted in song, confetti bursting across the glass-walled room. My boss, a man known for his sternness, stepped forward, handed me a bouquet, and patted my shoulder with a proud smile. I thought maybe this year would be different. I thought perhaps all the sleepless years of effort had finally been seen. But just as I cut into the first slice of cake, my phone began to buzz nonstop. 12 missed calls, all from my mother. Then a text from my father, short, cold as steel. You have 48 hours to transfer $50,000 to Miles. If not, we'll do something that will make sure you never hold your head up in Chicago again. I froze, still clutching the plate with cake. The words on the screen felt like a sentence. To everyone else, I was the successful, capable woman who lacked nothing. But behind the glow of achievement was a family who could stab me in the back at any moment. Have you ever been threatened, forced by your own family on your birthday? If you've ever faced something like this, leave a comment below. I read them all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if you also believe success should never come at the cost of blind sacrifice. Because what I'm about to tell you might make you see your own family with completely different eyes. I gripped the phone tighter, my thumb hovering over the message, the glow of the screen lighting my face, making my pupils widen with chill. No one around me knew what had just happened. They kept laughing, glasses clinking, confetti falling into my hair, no one noticing that my smile had vanished. I set the plate of cake on the table, forcing my breath to stay even. Outside the glass windows, snow drifted lightly, laying a pale sheet over rooftops in the distance. My birthday always came at the start of winter, the coldest time of year, but the chill had never seeped this deep inside me until now. I walked into my office, shut the door, and sank into the chair as if the weight of the building itself was pressing me down. That message, it wasn't a joke. I'd lived with them long enough to know when they threatened, they followed through. And they always knew exactly where to strike. You have 48 hours to transfer $50,000 to Miles. I lifted my eyes to the framed photo on my desk, me giving a speech at the PR awards last month. I remembered that night. My father didn't send so much as a text. My mother only typed 2 words beneath an online article Jennifer had shared. Not bad. And now, here they were, demanding a sum equal to 6 months of a mid-level salary for Miles. No reason. No explanation. Just, if not, we'll do something that will make sure you never hold your head up in Chicago again. That was what terrified me most. Not losing the money. But the part after, it felt like they held something that could drag me down, no need for details. They'd never cared what I achieved, but somehow they watched closely enough to know how to hurt me. I opened my laptop, hands trembling. I began pulling up Miles's recent transactions I still had access to. I remembered small hints from the last time I'd seen him at a family gathering, me at the bar mixing my own drink, him hovering near an investment banker, begging for a phone number. That night, he asked me, "Quinn, do you know anyone at Region Tech? I need to meet their head of marketing." I laughed it off. I'm in PR, not a dating service for executives. But now, the picture was clear. He was scrambling. Miles had never needed to save himself because I'd always been his safety net. Whether by choice or force, I couldn't even say anymore. All I knew was that I was exhausted. My phone lit again. This time, a call from my mother. I let it ring until the screen went dark. Then came the flood of texts. "Have you read it yet? Miles has no one else. If you still care about family." I stood, walked out into the hall where it was quieter. The office buzzed with music, my kind coworkers still believing I was enjoying my birthday like anyone else. Jennifer caught my eyes as I re-entered the conference room. She frowned, hurried over, and whispered, "What's wrong? You look like you're about to faint." I shook my head. I couldn't explain here. I couldn't ruin their joy. But in my mind, the puzzle pieces kept clicking together, the picture sharper by the second. They needed money to save Miles, that much was obvious. But what stole my breath was the ice-cold indifference behind their demand. No, are you okay? No, happy birthday. Only demands and threats. I sat back at the table, lifted a champagne glass but didn't drink. My eyes drifted to the snowy blur outside. One question echoed inside me. What exactly did they hold over me that made them believe they could control me like this? And if I didn't obey, what would they actually do? Ruin my career? Leak rumors? Use my name for something illegal? Or worse, had they already done it and I just hadn't discovered it yet? A shiver traced down my spine. I opened my email again, scanning my financial accounts. Nothing unusual. Yet the unease didn't lift. I called my attorney, left a message. I needed someone to review every contract with my name from the past 2 years. I needed certainty. Jennifer appeared at my side, resting a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You need a break. We can move the last meeting to tomorrow." I nodded, forced a smile. "Thank you." I gathered my things, slipped on my coat, and hurried out of the building. The icy wind slapped my face, but it felt more real than the warmth inside. Not because of the cold, but because I knew, within days, everything could change. I wouldn't let them corner me again. But first, I had to know exactly what card they were holding. I ducked into a small cafe at the end of the street, my usual refuge after grueling meetings. The room was warm, golden light spilling over rustic wooden tables, a false calm against the storm in my chest. I sat by the window, ordered my usual espresso with no sugar, then opened my notebook. The notes from the morning meeting still glared up at me, but I couldn't focus. My mind drifted back, 13 years old. I still remember the chocolate cake I baked myself, 3 hours in the kitchen because Mom forgot to order one like she'd promised. The house empty. Everyone else at the high school gym across town, cheering for Miles in the basketball championship. He made the winning shot, the crowd roared. And me? I sat alone at the dining table, lit a candle with an old lighter, whispered 3 words no one heard. Happy birthday. That year I didn't cry. I'd already learned to fend for myself. I cut one slice, put the rest in the fridge with a note. For the family when you're back. No one touched it. At 21, I threw a small dorm party, just a few friends, a couple bottles of cheap wine, a tiny red velvet cake. I was about to blow out the candles when my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Quinn, postpone it. We're having dinner to celebrate Miles and Erica's engagement. I'll call later." No birthday wish, no mention of me, and of course, no call later. I thought those things wouldn't matter once I grew up. But now, sitting in the cafe with a cold cup of coffee, I felt like that 13-year-old again, holding a spoonful of self-baked cake, hoping someone would remember, then realizing no one would. I scrolled through my contacts, Mom, Dad, Miles, each name like a small cut, sharp and quiet yet lingering. My finger hovered over Jennifer's name, tempted to type something, but I didn't. The wind outside picked up, branches rattling hard against the glass. I clenched the cup, the chill of the ceramic pulling me back. I needed clarity. I needed action. I tore a page from my notebook, began writing a timeline of every milestone that had been overshadowed, forgotten, or deliberately dismissed for Miles. Birthday 13, Miles wins basketball championship. Birthday 18. My high school graduation cut short because the family rushed to the airport to pick Miles up from his summer program. Birthday 21, Miles's engagement dinner. College graduation, I delivered the valedictorian speech. Not one family member showed up because of a missed flight. Promotion to PR team lead interrupted by mom's call about an important guest at Miles's party. Each line, a hollow spot. A missing piece. I had always defended them, said Miles was busy, said my parents were older, maybe forgetful, said maybe I was too sensitive, but not anymore. The pieces had formed a mirror showing the truth I'd long denied. I was never really part of their spotlight. I was only the dim background to their stage. The cafe filled with laughter as a group of students sat at the next table sharing some silly story. I looked up, saw the genuine joy in their faces. A small moment everyone deserves, especially on their birthday. And me? I was being threatened by my own family. I opened my phone again, reread my father's text. The words unchanged, heavy as stone in my chest. You have 48 hours to transfer $50,000 to Miles. It was the silence after that chilled me most. They didn't need to explain, didn't need to persuade. They assumed I would comply. Like always. I bit my lip, tasting salt, maybe from the bitterness rising too fast. I'd never fought back. All my life I was the easy child, no demands, no rebellion, just steady effort. But apparently, that was never enough. Or perhaps, never what they cared about. I wondered, if I disappeared from this city, sent no money, no explanation, no reply, would they even look for me? Or would they simply move on, target the next person capable of cleaning up Miles's mess? I closed the notebook and slipped it into my bag. On the way home, I planned to stop by my lawyer's office. I needed to make everything clear, every credit account, every document that could have been misused. I wasn't a child waiting for someone else to step in and protect me anymore. And I wasn't naive enough to believe family ties were unbreakable. I dialed Jennifer. Are you free right now? What's going on? You once mentioned you had a friend in internal auditing, right? I need you to help me verify some files. Urgent. Jennifer paused. Are you okay? I stared out at the traffic streaming along Michigan Avenue, headlights blurring together like chaotic streaks of light. I don't know yet, I replied, but I'm about to find out. That evening, I sat in front of my computer in my apartment, daylight fading through the sheer white curtains, casting shadows across the scattered papers on my desk. The afternoon dragged slowly, but my mind spun as though 100 gears were turning at once. Jennifer had sent me a secure link through her friend at a financial monitoring firm. From there, I entered a few basic details I remembered about Miles: his social security number, date of birth, old home address. I wasn't sure how deep I was allowed to access, but I needed a clue to understand why my parents could be so cold. The screen loaded a short list of credit files, loans, collateral agreements, and a series of accounts flagged high risk. I read line by line. At least 3 loans from underground financial outfits in New Jersey and Nevada, 2 maxed out credit cards, and 1 file under investigation for falsifying income on an investment loan. Miles wasn't just in debt, he was drowning. My phone buzzed. It was Jennifer. I put her on speaker. Did you find anything? It's worse than I thought. Loans from underground lenders, and some files flagged for fraudulent activity. God, if that gets out, it won't just sink Miles, it could blow back on your company if people trace the connection. I stayed quiet. A darker thought crossed my mind. Maybe my parents weren't pressuring me just to bail Miles out, but to bury something deeper. I opened my work inbox, searching through the Region Tech campaign emails I'd been leading. It was a major project worth over $3 million, with me as the public face of the entire marketing campaign. Any misstep would land squarely on me. One strange email caught my eye. It came from Martin.Gentry at consultshare.co, not part of the official project team. It thanked me for a quick exchange with Miles at Region Tech's offices the previous week and promised to consider investment opportunities if certain technical conditions were met. My body locked up. I had never introduced Miles to anyone at Region Tech, never mentioned him to a single soul there. But clearly, he had used my name to gain access and worse, possibly impersonated me in the process. I called Jennifer immediately. "Are you at the office?" "Yeah, I just got back, but I left my laptop there." "Why?" "Check the lobby camera recordings at Region Tech from last Wednesday. I need to know if Miles showed up. Give me a few minutes." I paced my living room, each step heavier in the silence. Before long, my phone rang. "Got it. It's Miles. Wearing a suit, guest badge with your name. I can send you a screenshot." I let out a long breath, half anger, half despair. "Did you see anyone with him?" "Number." But he spoke with their head of marketing for about 20 minutes. I collapsed into a chair, mind wringing. Miles had impersonated me, and my parents knew. They couldn't not know. I opened my personal inbox and found an old email from my mother a few weeks ago. She'd sent some family photos with a casual line, "Is work going okay? Don't push yourself too hard." Miles said Region Tech might be considering a partner change. You should pay attention. That last sentence hit me now. Miles said? He wasn't just meddling in my work. He was feeding on inside information, possibly from my parents themselves. And they were using it to manipulate me. I searched my inbox with the keywords Region Tech plus Miles. Another email popped up from an anonymous address, quinwatch@safe-mail.net. Subject: If you don't help your brother, some people may become very interested in this. Below was a short message. Miles Edwards had approached Region Tech's marketing director with an investment proposal using unreleased internal data, including the December campaign schedule. If the press learns of this, Horizon PR will lose the entire contract. I read the words over and over. A thinly veiled threat. I didn't need to ask who sent it. The phrasing, the content, the tone, it didn't take genius to see where it came from. My family. This wasn't a plea for help, it was blackmail. If I didn't give Miles the money, they would torpedo my Region Tech contract by exposing his use of insider data, something I had nothing to do with, but the fallout would land on me. I leaned back, spine chilled as though pressed against stone. One word echoed in my head: betrayal. But if they thought I would quietly hand over money again, they were wrong. I reached for my leather notebook, flipped to the last page, and wrote, "Action list." At the top, I underlined in bold, "I am no one's lifeline anymore." Saturday morning, Jennifer showed up at my door unannounced. Just a short text beforehand. "Open up. It's important." I was still in a thin sweater, hair unbrushed, but one look at her eyes through the crack of the door told me courtesy could wait. She stepped inside, carrying a folder, a canvas bag stuffed with her laptop and papers. I shut the door, made 2 coffees, and we sat at the dining table, the table that, for the past 2 years, had been piled with documents and bills rather than meals. Jennifer slid the folder across to me. "I got a file from Quant Fund, an online lender in Utah. The registered name, Quinn R. Edwards. Date of birth, correct. Address correct. Everything matches." I clenched my coffee cup. "But that's not me. The signature on the contract isn't yours either." I flipped to the first page. The scrawl looked rushed, sloppy. But whoever forged it had studied me closely. The curl of the Q, the downward slash at the end of Edwards, close enough to fool anyone but me. There's also an audio file of the account registration call. Jennifer pulled out a USB stick, plugged it into her laptop, and connected a speaker. A man's voice played. "Yes, this is Quinn, Renee Edwards. I'm requesting an expedited approval for $80,000. Yes, I'm using it for a property acquisition in Phoenix. I stopped breathing. That voice, Miles, no edits, no disguise. He hadn't even tried to change his tone. I turned to Jennifer. How did he think this wouldn't come out? Jennifer leaned back. Because he counted on you never daring to expose him. My hands trembled over the screen. If anyone traced that loan, the fallout would be on me, the name on the file. Even if I hadn't signed, I'd be the first under investigation. In PR, image is everything. I don't understand how my parents could let this slide, I said, voice heavy. Can't they see the risk? Can't they see I could lose everything if this breaks open? Jennifer stayed silent a long while. Maybe they do. They just don't care. I lowered my eyes to the rim of my cup. Jennifer pressed her palms to the table, voice firm. You have the right to sue, to call the police. This is serious identity fraud, especially in finance. I shook my head. If I do that, they'll spin it. They'll claim I was complicit and then washed my hands. They'll drag the media into it. You're afraid of a scandal? Not afraid, I answered slowly, afraid of being dragged down with them. The room went quiet. Outside, light rain tapped against the window, the wind brushing faintly at the glass. I got up, went into my bedroom, and pulled out a small wooden box from my drawer. Inside were all my original IDs, driver's license, passport, tax documents, everything I'd ever used to prove who I was in major contracts. I compared my signature samples with the one on the loan file. Not mine, but close. Too close. I carried the box back, pushed it across to Jennifer. Take these originals, give them to a lawyer you trust. If things get worse, I need someone to safeguard the evidence. Jennifer studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I won't let anyone touch you. I rested my head on the table, inhaled deeply. Miles's calm, steady voice from that audio file still rang in my ears, as if he believed he had the whole game under control. We need to dig deeper, I said. I don't believe this was the only time. Jennifer opened her laptop, searching smaller financial institutions with weaker checks. After more than an hour, another result appeared: a personal loan of $25,000 from South Tech Credit Union, also under the name Quinn R. Edwards. I gave a bitter laugh. All these years, I've been the family's backup wallet, but I didn't think they'd turn me into a walking credit file. Jennifer tilted her head. If you agree, I can ask Paul from legal to collect documents and send formal warnings to these institutions, quietly, just as a first line of defense. I nodded. Do it. You've helped me this far. I can't stall anymore. Jennifer closed her laptop, picked up the box of documents, and headed for the door. Quinn, you're not alone. Don't let them make you believe there's only one way forward. I walked her to the elevator. When the doors closed, I stood there for a long moment. Maybe this was the first time I truly faced the truth. The people who gave me life were not my protectors. And if I wanted to keep my life intact, I had to take control myself. There was no one left to lean on but me. But this time, I wasn't stepping forward alone. I had Jennifer. I had the truth. And I was starting to reclaim my own voice. I parked in front of the gray stone mansion in the wealthy northern neighborhood of the city, the place where I had spent my teenage years. The neatly trimmed evergreens still lined the marble walkway leading to the heavy oak doors. The house looked exactly as it had the day I left. But standing before it now, the feeling was completely different. I tightened my hand and pushed the door open. Inside, the air carried the scent of candle wax, soft perfume, and the spice stew my mother always made for special occasions. The dining table was carefully set, crisp white tablecloth, candles in silver holders, cutlery aligned perfectly. My mother, Claudia, stood by the counter, lowering a bowl of salad as she glanced up at me. "You're here." Her voice was flat, without warmth. My father, Richard, stepped out of the living room, wine glass in hand. He tilted his head, expressionless, gesturing toward the table. Everyone's waiting. I nodded, slipped off my scarf, set my bag by the chair, and sat across from Miles. He looked polished as always, hair slicked back, white shirt buttoned at the collar, Swiss watch on his left wrist. No one spoke for the first few minutes. The only sound was the knife slicing through roasted meat. I took a sip of water, set the glass down, then lifted my eyes. I came because I need you to explain something. I fixed my gaze on my father. Why did Miles use my name to take out fraudulent loans? My mother's fork froze for a second, but she quickly regained composure. Quinn, you're exaggerating. Number, I have the evidence, contracts, audio recordings, even security footage of him wearing my name badge at Region Tech. He didn't just impersonate me. He exploited the relationships I've built over the past 10 years. Richard set his wine down, the sound sharp in the silence. He folded his arms, looking at me like I was an unruly student interrupting a lecture. Miles needs help, and you're the only one in this family who can provide it right now. We are family. Everyone stumbles. Family protects each other. A small laugh escaped me. And who's protecting me? Have you thought about what happens if this is exposed? I'll lose my job, my reputation, maybe face legal action. And Miles? Once again shielded by the label of family, my mother spoke, softer but cutting like a blade. You're too sensitive. You always have been. Miles, he's careless sometimes, yes, but he knows how to adapt. You insist everything is black and white, but life isn't that simple. I leaned back, eyes sweeping the room walls covered with pictures of Miles, winning trophies, graduating, getting engaged. In each frame, I was barely visible, a blurry extra at the edge. I'm not here to debate philosophies. My fingers brushed the rim of the porcelain plate. I'm here to make it clear. I will not hand over $50,000 to anyone, and I will not sign a single document to cover Miles's actions. Miles dropped his utensils, folded his arms, voice hoarse. You're betraying your own blood over a few contracts? Real siblings don't treat each other this way. I turned to him, eyes steady. Betrayal is forging my identity to get loans, gambling with my future. And don't talk to me about real siblings. Real siblings don't force each other to pay for their mistakes without consequences. The air thickened. My father rose, walked to the fireplace where Miles's finance award hung. He turned back, fingers laced. If you refuse to cooperate, the consequences won't stop here. Region Tech is a major project. If the press senses instability on your end, who do you think your company will side with? I'm not afraid of losing a contract. I'm afraid of losing myself if I stay silent. My mother interjected quickly, as if to calm things. We can talk about this more gently. There's no need to push it this far. I'm not the one pushing. You did by forcing me to clean up a mistake I didn't make. I stood calm but firm. I won't repeat this again. If anyone uses my name illegally, I will handle it through the law. My mother reached out to grab my hand, but I stepped back. Her eyes flickered, lips pressed tight. I'm not the obedient child you can control anymore. My father narrowed his eyes, voice cold. If your career collapses over this, don't blame us. I smiled faintly, moving toward the door. If it collapses because I stood up for myself, that's a consequence I'll accept. But if I bow down to preserve what no longer belongs to me, I'll lose who I am entirely. I opened the door. Cold air swept in, carrying damp grass and mist. Behind me, no one said another word. I stepped down the stone steps, my chest strangely light. The deepest pain wasn't being hurt, it was realizing they didn't even see what they had done wrong. But in that moment, I knew I had left the shadows behind, and I wasn't going back. That morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The streets were still damp with dew, the city not fully awake, but Horizon's building glowed from the third floor upward. I loved those quiet minutes before the day began when no one knocked on my door, no phones rang, no one demanded I shoulder everything without the right to falter. But today wasn't like other days. Eliza, the young receptionist who usually greeted me with a bright smile, only gave a slight nod and glanced nervously toward the elevator. I sensed something wrong, like a storm quietly gathering behind a closed door. Before I could open my computer, a text flashed on my phone. From Lawrence, the CEO, Conference Room B, 12th floor, now. 4 words, no more, no less, but enough to quicken my heartbeat. I rose, swiped my badge at security, each step heavier as the elevator climbed. The blinds were drawn in the conference room. Lawrence sat at the head of the table, his usual warmth gone. Beside him were 2 faces I didn't often see, Cynthia from legal and Davis from internal audit. Jennifer was there too, in the far corner, tense, clutching a folder I suspected held the truth. Lawrence gestured for me to sit. "We received an anonymous email last night," he began, voice low. "Sent to the entire board and the audit team. It accuses you of financial misconduct, accepting undisclosed commissions from Regentech and taking out loans for personal profit through company assets." The words stabbed like ice. I opened my mouth, but Lawrence raised a hand. "I'm not concluding anything yet, but we are obligated to investigate. In the meantime, you're suspended from accessing all Regentech campaign files." I glanced at Jennifer. She gave the slightest nod, her eyes telling me, "Stay calm, we've got this." I took a breath. "Let me see the email." Cynthia slid a laptop toward me. On the screen was a short, nameless message. Subject: Horizon is harboring a dangerous imposter. The text listed every loan under my name, including the $80,000 one Jennifer had uncovered, with an excerpt from a Regentech internal email mentioning Quinn bringing a relative into the office under unclear intentions. I leaned back, keeping my tone even. "I have evidence these loans were fraudulent. The signatures were forged. The person behind. It is my brother, Miles Edwards." Lawrence frowned. "Can you prove that?" Jennifer spoke up. "We've secured an audio recording with Miles's voice, along with security footage showing him wearing Quinn's badge to meet Regentech's marketing director. And the signatures on the loan contracts don't match her legal signature. Legal has begun cross-verification." Davis flipped through Jennifer's documents, then gave Lawrence a small nod. "For now, this can be classified as identity fraud, not internal misconduct." Lawrence looked at me, his tone softer. "But why would your brother do this? And why didn't your family stop him?" A bitter smile touched my lips. "Because they didn't just stay silent. They knew. They encouraged it. To them, I'm a financial backup plan. Nothing more." The room went still. Jennifer's voice cut through, firm. "Quinn, we need to send legal notices to every institution involved. This isn't just personal anymore." I nodded. "I agree. And I'm ready to file charges if necessary." Lawrence studied me for a long moment, then stood. "You remain a respected employee here until the truth is clear. But be careful, Quinn. Someone in your family is playing very hard." I left the conference room, feet barely feeling the ground. Jennifer hurried after me, gripping my hand in the hallway. "You okay?" My voice rasped. "Number. But I won't let them bring me down." She squeezed my hand. "I'm here. Step by step, Quinn." I turned toward the glass wall of the corridor. Beyond it, Chicago's skyline rose, steel towers proud and unyielding. But even the strongest steel can collapse if hollowed from within. I refuse to be hollowed out. Not by family, not by the past, not by anyone but myself. That weekend, I drove back to the old house in Evanston, not for reconciliation, but for answers. I had reached out to Uncle Gordon, my grandmother's youngest brother, who still lived in a red brick house, less than 2 hours away. Since her passing, he had been the only relative to keep in touch without strings attached. Even in his 70s, his voice over the phone was steady and warm. "If you need to learn about your grandmother, come. There are things you should have seen long ago." I drove down tree-lined streets covered in golden leaves, the gray sky reflected on the damp hood of my car. My chest was torn between hope and dread. I only knew something waited for me at the end of that road, something my parents had hidden for years. Uncle Gordon greeted me at the door with a gentle hug and a cup of hot tea, brewed just the way Grandma used to like it. The air inside his home carried the same comfort as those summers I spent here when no one remembered my birthday. She was the one who quietly sent a handwritten card, sometimes with a knitted scarf or a small journal tucked inside. "Your grandmother left behind a few things I believe no one should know about except you," Uncle Gordon said as he led me into the basement storage room. A wooden chest sat neatly in the corner, the lock rusted but easy to pry open. Inside was a thick file, several notebooks, and an old photograph of me as a child sitting on her lap. I opened the file first. On the very first page, in bold type, were the words, "Special Trust Fund, Quinn, Renee, Edwards." I stared at the line, reading each word slowly to make sure I wasn't imagining it. "It's real," Uncle Gordon nodded. "She created it when you were 15. Back then, she told me she saw clearly what was happening at home. The way your parents always favored Miles while you were pushed aside." I flipped through more pages. Legal documents, bank confirmations, trustee details, everything complete. The amount was written clearly. $3.2 million invested in long-term funds, real estate, and dividend stocks. She didn't trust your parents with it, and she didn't want Miles involved. She appointed me as the temporary trustee, on the condition that I'd hand it over only after you turned 30 and could protect yourself. My hand touched the corner of the file, as if someone from the past had placed a steady grip on my shoulder. She had seen me long ago. When no one else paid attention to how I was growing up, she was quietly preparing an escape path for me. I opened the notebook under the file. The first page was written in her familiar slanted script. "Write down what must be remembered." Because sometimes people choose to forget. The rest were journal entries. Not daily notes, but short passages, each recalling a moment in my life. The day Quinn turned 10. Claudia forgot. Richard was busy attending a seminar with Miles. The child sat all afternoon by the kitchen door, holding a tiny gift she had wrapped herself. I pretended to ask if she wanted to come to my house for cake. She nodded without a word, but I saw her eyes were wet. Quinn finished high school, her grades far beyond expectations. Claudia only said, "Keep it up and college won't be too bad." But that same night, the family threw a party because Miles had just been accepted into a foreign exchange program. I asked Claudia why she didn't attend Quinn's thesis defense. She smirked. "The girl can handle herself. Miles needs encouragement more." I stayed silent. I was afraid if I spoke, I'd say something I could never take back. Each line squeezed my chest tighter. Every short note was a confirmation of the pain I had tried to swallow. I wasn't being too sensitive. I wasn't paranoid. Someone else had seen it, and she wrote it all down. "Your grandmother always said at some point you would have to choose, keep enduring or stand up and start over." Uncle Gordon's voice was steady, not pitying, not advising, just truth. I closed the journal, my hand resting on the worn leather cover. It wasn't exactly relief, but something heavy had been lifted off my chest. "I'll transfer this trust into my own control," I said slowly. "I don't plan to spend it recklessly. I need it to protect myself. He nodded. She would be proud. I smiled through blurred tears. On the drive back to the city, I stared out the window at the bare trees stretching endlessly along the highway. But I didn't feel cold anymore. A piece of memory had been returned to me, and from now on, I wouldn't let anyone take it away again. I didn't return to Horizon immediately after visiting Uncle Gordon. I requested 3 days off filed as personal, but the truth was bigger than any administrative reason. I needed time to prepare, not just documents, strategies, or legal support. I needed to steady myself inside so that when the moment came, I wouldn't tremble. During those 3 days, I worked with my private attorney, Marlene Tate, the woman Jennifer had introduced. In her early 60s, hair tied neatly back, she was quiet but firm, a lawyer who had spent 3 decades defending individuals in cases of family financial manipulation. After reviewing Miles's file, Marlene looked up at me, her voice low but clear. "You don't need to sacrifice anymore. From here on, I'll speak for you." And she did exactly that. Alongside her, I hired an investigator named Leon. He had once worked in the credit industry before moving into tracing identity fraud. Careful, discreet, soft-spoken, but with a wide network. Leon sent me surveillance footage from 3 credit branches where Miles had used my information to secure loans. In each clip, he walked in confidently, carrying a forged passport copy, signing forms, and walking out as if everything were legitimate. Every stroke of the pen, every movement, compiled into an investigative file nearly 300 pages thick. "He's too confident," Leon said as we sat in the cafe downstairs from my apartment building. "Probably because your parents have cleaned NNA up after him so many times before." I nodded silently. Everything was documented, notarized, backed by recordings and images. Marlene would represent me in all upcoming communications. On Friday afternoon, I received a digital invitation from Edgemont Holdings, the firm where Miles worked. Their year-end gala for strategic clients and major investors, hosted at the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago, 17th floor, the same stage for countless major financial deals. My name wasn't on the invitation, but Jennifer's was. She smiled when I asked. I registered for 2. Every toast needs company. I wore a simple black V-neck dress, elegant but not ostentatious. Jennifer chose a navy blue suit, hair pulled into a sleek bun, walking with the confidence of a financial journalist chasing a story. Marlene came with us, carrying a leather case and draped in a light gray fur shawl. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, plush carpets, and white draped cocktail tables. A piano played softly. Champagne poured endlessly into slender flutes. Miles stood in the center of a group of suited men, laughing, swirling his glass. My father was nearby, shaking hands with a gray-haired man in a fur coat, surely a wealthy investor. My mother hovered a few steps away, adjusting her silk scarf, eyes darting across the room. Jennifer stepped forward, lightly touched the shoulder of an event staffer holding a microphone, whispered a few words, then signaled me. I walked ahead. Marlene opened her case, pulling out a thick folder and placing it on the podium beside the mic. Jennifer's voice rang out, clear and steady. "Excuse me, everyone. We have information that must be made public right now to protect the legal rights of a guest who has been severely harmed by misconduct within this very organization." The piano stopped. Whispers rippled through the room. I stepped to the microphone, standing tall, eyes locked on Miles. "Good evening. My name is Quinn Edwards, and I want to confirm that over the past 6 months, my name has been used illegally to secure loans at 3 financial institutions and to approach my company's client. The person responsible is Miles Edwards, an employee of Edgemont Holdings." All eyes swung toward him. Glasses froze midair. My mother's eyes widened. My father's face drained of color. Marlene handed the folder to the event coordinator. Here are photographic evidence, forged signatures, and confirmations from regulatory authorities. An Edgemont legal officer stepped forward. Within minutes, Miles was escorted away from his circle of guests. The room was silent. Jennifer calmly refilled my champagne. I raised the glass, glancing at my mother standing frozen, clutching her ivory clutch tight. "I didn't do this out of revenge," I said softly, just loud enough for her to hear. "I did it because I had no other way to protect myself." She opened her mouth, but no words came. I turned and left the ballroom, heading straight for the elevator. Jennifer and Marlene flanked me. Flashbulbs popped in the hallway. A reporter had captured Miles being led away. A man once held up as the family's pride was now another name in his company's internal investigation files. I didn't look back. I only walked forward, each step closing an old chapter and opening a door I never thought I would step through. I entered the gray stone house on the hill that late afternoon, the last light slanting through the windows, streaking pale gold across the polished wooden floor. The same oak-paneled walls, the same citrus oil my mother always sprayed on the sofa before guests arrived. But today, the silence was different, as if the house itself was holding its breath. My parents were already seated in the living room. My mother's hand rested on an untouched teacup, her eyes avoiding mine as I entered. My father sat across from her, stern, chin raised, but his clasped hands betrayed the tension he was trying to hide. I pulled out a chair, set the leather case on the glass table in front of me. No one spoke. The clock ticked steadily, counting the silence pressing into the room. "I came as invited," I said evenly. "You said there was something important to discuss. But before I hear it, I brought a few things of my own." I laid down the first file, open to the notarized copy. "This is the trust fund my grandmother established for me at 15. It clearly names me as the sole beneficiary, with Uncle Gordon as trustee until I turned 30. My mother flinched slightly, as if burned. My father's face remained composed, but the tightness in his neck gave him away. "We were never told about this," my mother said quietly, her voice dry. "Because she hid it on purpose. She knew if you found out, it would no longer belong to me." I pulled out the slim journal, opening to a page marked with pink paper. "And this is her diary records of what I endured throughout my childhood. The birthdays forgotten, the achievements overshadowed, the moments erased by Miles's spotlight." My father frowned. "The past shouldn't be dredged up to assign blame. We did our best." "Number, you did your best? For Miles?" My eyes locked on his. "And me? How many times did I sit alone while you all went to his events? How many years did I quietly win scholarships, work part-time, while Miles was funded down to his last breath?" "You're insulting your brother," my mother cut in. "Miles made mistakes, but he takes responsibility. You, on the other hand, come here with lawyers and documents, treating this family like a courtroom. Because I've been silent too long." I placed the forgery evidence beside the trust papers. "And when I finally tried to defend myself, this family turned on me, sending anonymous letters, destroying my reputation, all to shield the one who broke the law." My mother's face grew pale. My father leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers lightly on the armrest. I pulled out a printed still from a security camera, Miles wearing my name badge, signing loan papers at a credit office in Nevada. Then I laid down another document bearing Miles's signature, an $80,000 loan under my name, which Leon had extracted from archived records. "This isn't just a mistake, it's a crime. And I cannot sacrifice my honor, my career, my future, just for family." My mother stayed silent, her eyes fixed on the papers scattered with her daughter's name. My father stared at me for a long moment. Then he sighed, and for the first time in my life he seemed smaller somehow. I pinned too much hope on Miles, and I failed to see that you were also moving forward, also working just as hard. I won't deny it anymore. I suppressed a heavy breath, not because of his admission, but because of all the years already lost, never to be reclaimed. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "What do you want from us?" she asked. "An apology or to turn your back completely?" I paused, then lifted my head, my voice low but firm. "I don't need an empty apology. And I'm not turning my back, because I was never truly on your side to begin with. I'm simply choosing myself. I'm choosing to build a life where you no longer decide my worth or whether I am enough." She looked at me, her hand tightening around the wrinkled white handkerchief. "You're still our daughter," I nodded slightly, "and I always will be, but I will no longer be the place where you dump responsibilities, guilt, or expectations I never chose. I am an adult, fully capable, and now I have proof of everything you once denied." I rose, carefully stacking the documents back together. "What I brought today is the truth. Facing it or not is up to you. As for me, I've done my part." No one stood to see me out. I walked down the stone hallway, my heels clicking softly in. The late afternoon stillness. The wind had shifted outside, carrying the scent of damp grass and pine from the trees at the back of the yard. I didn't look back. Not out of anger, but because there was nothing left to see. What I needed was already in my hands. What I needed to let go of, I had left behind. November sunlight spread a thin gold sheen across Lake Michigan, the water rippling gently under the cool breeze. I stood on the wooden deck of the small house I had bought with my grandmother's trust fund, this place I had never imagined calling home. But now, every brick, every nail, every curtain was my choice. Every detail reflected the person I had become through years of being overlooked. Inside, laughter and conversation filled the air. Jennifer was arranging pastries on the table, while Greg, the marketing director at Horizon, showed off by opening a bottle of wine without spilling a drop. Emily, the new hire in PR, folded napkins into flower shapes beside Mrs. Bennett, my 84-year-old neighbor who had been with me since the day I moved here. Mrs. Bennett, still graceful, her eyes sparkling with wit, her smile always tilted as though hiding a warm secret, was the first to tell me, "You don't need to wait for someone to give you a birthday. You just need to know you deserve to be celebrated." She was also the one who had just placed a small cream-colored candle on the carrot cake we had baked together that morning. As she lit it, she whispered, almost to herself, "This year, it's the year you truly live." I looked around the ivory-painted kitchen, the walls lined with photos of me and friends who had never forgotten my birthdays. None with my parents, but every frame was bright. Jennifer carried out the tray, her voice cheerful. "All right, it's time. Cake, candles, and wishes." Everyone stepped outside. They formed a small circle on the lawn by the lake. I approached the long wooden table where the cake sat, tilting my head toward the single candle flickering in the wind. "Happy birthday, Quinn," they shouted in unison. Mrs. Bennett stood at my side, gently taking my hand. I closed my eyes, not wishing for anything specific, just grateful that today I didn't have to sing the birthday song alone. As I blew out the candle, a car slowed to a stop at the wooden gate. No one else noticed, but I heard it clearly. I turned, and I saw him. Miles stood there, in a dark wool coat, his face stripped of the arrogance etched into my memories. His hair was tousled, his shoes muddied. In his hands was a small gray-blue box tied with a faded silver ribbon. The gathering fell silent. Jennifer looked at me, lips pressed, eyes cautious. But I raised my hand slightly, saying nothing, and walked toward the gate. Miles didn't speak at once. He looked at me, took a deep breath, then held the box out. "I didn't come to ruin your day. I Just wanted to give you this. I accepted the box and opened it. Inside was an old photograph. Me, 8 years old, sitting on a tire swing in the backyard of our old house, grinning wide, clutching a worn teddy bear. I had never seen this picture before. You always said, Miles began softly, that no one remembered your birthday. But once, I hid by the window, watching you sit alone in the yard all afternoon. I had Dad's camera with me. I took this. Then I put it away. I only just found it again. I looked at him, silent. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just thought you deserve to be remembered, not as the shadow in this family. I lifted the photo, the slanted sunlight catching the old film, making the child's face shine clearer. I saw myself again, innocent, hopeful, still believing that if I waited long enough, someone would remember. Thank you, I said quietly. Would you like to stay for cake? Miles hesitated, then nodded, unable to hide his surprise. I led him to the lawn, where everyone was seated, starting to cut the cake. Jennifer gave me a brief glance but said nothing. Mrs. Bennet pulled up an extra chair and handed me a warm cup of tea. It's a birthday, she said softly. The more who remember, the better. Miles sat at the edge of the table. He said nothing all evening, only nodding when offered a drink, smiling faintly at a joke. But in his eyes, I saw something quieter, stripped of pride. I didn't know where things between us would go. I couldn't erase what had been done. But I didn't need to hold myself rigid anymore. Because I had found the most valuable thing of all, to be seen, to be chosen, to walk forward on my own terms. No longer relying on anyone's validation, not even family. The lakeside house wasn't as grand as the old mansion, but here I could be myself. No one crossed my name off the guest list. No one forgot to light a candle. No one told me my success was secondary. Only genuine smiles, the clinking of glasses, and an old photograph proof that even the blurriest past can be illuminated again, if we're brave enough to face it. What do you think about family relationships when love becomes pressure, when silence can make a child grow up feeling invisible? My story isn't just about the journey from pain to freedom. It's a reminder that every one of us deserves to be valued, blood or not. I chose to walk away from those who never saw my worth, to build a new family, friends, neighbors, colleagues, people who remember my birthday, not out of obligation, but from genuine care. If you've ever felt what I did forgotten, exhausted from trying to be recognized, share your thoughts below. I'll read every word. Maybe your story will help someone else who feels lost find their way again. And if you want more true stories about family, the wounds, the choices, and the miracles that happen when we dare to change, subscribe to the channel. There's so much more I want to share, not just about sorrow, but about the light we can find beyond it.